I think in these 30 years, the question, are we winning the war on cancer, has been the question that I've heard more times in my life.
Well, this is, in my career, in my life, is the first meeting which asks such a crucial question. Are we winning the war on cancer?
Well, dear friends, dear colleagues, it is a great pleasure for me to welcome you in the name of the European School of Oncology for this first World Oncologic Forum here in Lugano.
We realize that many patients and very many people ask us almost every day the question, are you sure that we are winning the battle against cancer? So we decided, well, why not have that as a topic and organize a closed event where the best worldwide expert would try to answer this question.
Thank you, Jim Bishop from Australia. Just a couple of points. One is that I think every patient I've ever met wants to get cured. So
we had people from Australia to Russia, from China to the United States.
Look at breast cancer. Breast cancer is working pretty well. It can work better, but it's working. But colon is not working. Prostate is not working.
These are people nearly Nobel Prize, all head of institutes.
Ensure that the oncology community network is optimized always for each patient.
Right, because we haven't really done enough to the global community to eradicate cancer. And I think
we're very impressed that everybody said yes, and they came. So now, of course, we will have to give an answer which makes sense.
Certainly there will be different opinions, different suggestions, but I think that is needed because we have to build up a strategy.
What is your goal? What is it you really want to achieve? What are your personal commitments as a community to achieving this goal?
For the World Oncology Forum, I was the scientific coordinator working with the speakers in developing the agenda to make sure that it was very focused on the questions we were asking.
What will be your measures of success? What is your strategy going to be to deliver that success? This is your opportunity to speak to the world and to build a global movement around cancer.
It's one thing to keep coming up with challenges, it's another thing to start defining solutions that can really make a difference.
I think the consensus is that we've got some serious problems, that the cancer burden at a global level is profound and getting bigger.
European School of Oncology is very broad and takes people from such a much bigger area. It seems to me quite a maverick body by comparison with some of the others I deal with. They don't have a particular agenda as far as I know. Perhaps they do now.
If we are to anticipate this demographic time bomb, are we really just looking at a financial time bomb? It's not just the new people getting the disease, the huge numbers that we're expecting in the next 10, 20 years, but the cost of paying for that treatment. That's an immense problem, and I think people are just starting to come to terms with that. And for 40 years, we really haven't had war. We haven't had any kind of orchestration, any kind of commitment.
The main danger, at the end, people would say, well, the problem is so complex and the situation is so bad that there is nothing which can be done, which was also 15 years ago the reaction that many people showed towards the AIDS epidemic.
We are fighting against a deadly disease, and I believe that in many areas we are winning. But there is a lot to do. We should not be fighting many cancers because we could avoid them. And it's extremely important in my eyes that we continue to push efforts throughout the world to stop, for example, tobacco.
Prevention is not in our hands of doctors. It's in the hands of the government, of the population, of the journalist, of every person in the community who may give the message that preventing cancer is possible, it must be done.
Anybody want to say anything about the statement on tobacco?
Coming back to the tobacco issue, not compromise with anything less complete elimination eventually of tobacco.
Very good. That's the kind of, that's really the kind of bold thing we need to go beyond just motherhood and apple pie.
It's extremely important to try to maintain the independence and transparency in an environment where you have the best scientists express their views in a very transparent manner and without any conflicts of interest.
So these are the three things. It's really prevention, access, and then working on the uncurable, which are the majority. Each one of those
independence is always very important, because you don't want for the people that's in it to be affected by anyone who is sponsoring or putting this together. But more importantly is a public perception.
We shouldn't dilute what the goal is and what the aim is. And it's to cure more people, prevent cancer, and relieve suffering. If all the cancer bodies, whether they're education, whether they're treatment, whether they're advocacy bodies, work together, we have an incredible set of resources that we can deploy to actually make progress.
My concern is that we'll be in this position in another 10 years' time, in another 30 years' time, because we're continuing to look inwardly.
I think we're much more likely to bring a much more political lobby into this than if we were doing this as individuals. Collectively bringing this forum together and putting out a consensus statement that we can then use both for public and political lobbying, I think is much, much more powerful than doing that at an individual level.
We will only succeed as an integrated effort, and we will fail for sure if we position ourselves as a separate effort.
One of the reasons why for AIDS it works much better than it works for cancer is the link to the word epidemic. If you can show that cancer is the new epidemic, people will be more willing to embrace the cause.
I can remember sitting in the United Kingdom embassy in Addis Ababa next to somebody, and we were talking about what could we do in Africa. This was around the year 2000. And he said to me, we just have to accept that the entire generation of people who are living with AIDS in the world today are going to die, and there's nothing we can do for them. That was an extraordinary statement. 10 years on, we see that it's entirely unacceptable, and the institutions and political leadership in AIDS have completely transformed that. In a decade's time, that's where we should be in cancer care.
This will not be an isolated statement. This is something that we hope will really raise awareness of the problem that exists globally in relation to cancer and will spell out very clearly what needs to be done.
We'll go through them again. So, number one, we need a statement on an overarching goal, which is about action now with a defined